I have felt in such a quandary. Well, that's a very Latin word, isn't it? Unsure what to expect, who to expect, how you would be and how I would feel about you thinking about me. But actually, I think that Carly has dropped me in it, as they say, because we were to meet outside All Saints Church, at which I was regularly in attendance when I was a young person here in Palmerston North, many years ago. But then she said I was in a pub, and I was, an Irish pub. I was waiting for my brother, you see, who hadn't turned up, so I was on to my second Chardonnay, and these chaps here, they invited me to join them, and I did. That's sort of what I do. God, that's a pregnant pause if ever I heard one. Anyway, how much do I tell? What do I tell? And above all, ladies and gentlemen, what should I leave out? But then Jenny has dropped me in it. Sound people, am I doing okay? Jenny has dropped me in it by saying we want to know all the spicy bits. You know? So, okay, right, here we go. Now, I was born in Palmerston North in 1946 and went to school here, and is there anyone in this audience who knows me? My original name, my sort of birth name was Gay Davison. Is there anyone here who was at school with me? No? Standard 1 or Standard 2 or... Was that a hand? No. Is there anyone that much later, no, I don't think so. Anyone a bit later in my life when, look here, I taught Sunday school, taught it, right? Oh, I was about 19 by then and preparing to leave home and go to university in Wellington, woo! But teaching Sunday school. Now, I feel I must say that the Sunday school teacher in me has been extremely challenged by what happened, or what has happened, or what I have let myself experience. I'm not sure that the Sunday school teacher has survived. That's just a bit of a warning, yeah. Now, with my glasses on, I can see you, and I'm going to put them on if ever I think that there are scowls of disapproval, which might chase me away from this podium. So far, so good. If I'm reading a poem, I'll take the glasses off because that's how these glasses work. Who else has got glasses like that? It's a jolly nuisance to see if you're scowling or smiling to read a poem. Anyway, that's the way it is. So I have got some poems, but I know that Jenny said, tell us your stories. God, where do I start? Well, it was a conventional enough upbringing. A farmer father and a lovely and refined mother, and we were beautifully brought up, weren't we, Stuart?
That's
I didn't hear that. What was that, Stuart?
I said that's very correct.
You see, we were brought up we were given manners, which is so important, and, you know, told to, yeah, be nice, and we were nice. We are nice. What's the first poem I should read you? I'm going to read you one which recalls my father, and also perhaps all of us. Is it too soon to read you a poem? No. No, okay, here we go. Look. This one's called, and it's sort of where I'm at. Am I a real Kiwi? To be a real Kiwi, do I have to have an iwi? Can I just be your average Pākehā? NZers say, oh, she'll be right. That's the opposite of being uptight, might just get you by, though not that far. To the arts we're somewhat new, with reputations yet to you. We know, however, what we like. If not, you can take a hike. As for accents, I am wary. Do we say ferry or do we say fairy? The British gave us rules, but we are colonials. Give me a corrugated iron roof and meat that once was on the hoof. I'm a farm girl. I look for mushrooms in a ditch and cress still with the dirt on. Dad would say, keep your shirt on, tastes better that way. You know what? He was right. In what does Kiwiness reside? I think that I can say with pride it's about plain, unvarnished food and cowpats that steam in the sun. Okay, New Zealand and Palmerston North, one thing. But when I left the country, in a passenger liner for the other side of the world, who else has been in a passenger liner and knows how long it takes to get from here to some port in London, England? Yeah, how long?
I went the opposite way.
Sorry?
I went the other way from
Oh, okay. How long did it take?
6.5 weeks.
It's 6 weeks. You tell that to a young person these days and they say, what? You spent 6 weeks getting from here to England? You did.
My mother did it.
Yeah. It was an experience, particularly seeing that the ship that I went on was called the Angelina Lauro, an Italian ship, and it was full of Italians returning from Australia to their home country, and I spent most of the time fleeing amorous Italians. That was a good intro to the other side of the world and what it would bring in terms of experiences. Well, the first one was Amsterdam. Woo! I'm giving the sound effect that I thought some of you might. Would you put your hand up, please, if you've ever been to Amsterdam? Whoa, okay, so what would your word be? What would your exclamation be of Amsterdam in one word, say?
Gezellig.
Say?
Gezellig.
Gezellig.
Gezelligheid.
Which means lovely, yeah?
Which means it's a very specific word, which means tasty,
Right.
cozy.
Yes. Yes. Gezellig. Yeah.
Gezelligheid.
Yeah. Right. Thank you. Any other words that come to mind from anyone?
Well, when we went, the first time it was hippie,
Yes.
and the second time was dog shit on the pavement and pregnant on sitting on a bench covered in ice.
Okay. Well, when I got there in 1975, I didn't know what to expect. And there I was, all innocence, with my little suitcase, taking a side street to find my accommodation for the night, which was called the Kabul. And I saw my first red light woman. This was the beginning of the red light district. What struck me was this hot pink light that comes from behind and lights up the woman. On one side of her there was a dairy, and on the other side of her lit up room was a grocery shop, right? So she's in between these two very usual sorts of things. She's sitting there, got a short skirt on and glasses, and she's knitting. Knitting. Okay, right. So this added an air of normality, if I may use that word, to what I was seeing, you know. This is Amsterdam, and this is normal. And really, my 4 years in Amsterdam were an exploration of what normal can mean in different cultures, you know, and different ways of being. I was constantly amazed at the Dutch and how accepting or seemingly, let's say, practical about things such as prostitution and the red light district, yeah? And where drugs were concerned, there was a place called the Milky Way, Melkweg in Dutch, which meant it was an old, disused milk factory. And in fact, it was a drug house, in the sense that there was a room in that whole complex which was full of stalls where you could literally buy hashish and marijuana of different kinds from all over the world, as practically as if you were in a shop buying any other sort of thing. Now, I wasn't really into the drugs part of things, but I used to watch people in amazement. And in the streets, if you were out at night in a darkish street, you might hear a hissed, "I've got hashish, you want some?" You know, just coming out of the darkness like that. And I was struck with the practicality of all of that, and I loved it. I had an attic an attic bedroom just round the corner from the red light district. And here's the thing. Okay, I was working in a seedy little hotel as a waitress, and across the room from me was the dishwasher. Now, this personage struck me immediately. He was, we called them black men in those days. African American is now the expression we'd use, but here he was with a mint green jeans and, hey, I'm channeling you, and a white poncho, and he was gracefully loading the crockery and the cutlery into the machine with such style and grace that I thought to myself, who on earth is this? Well, I spent the next 4 years in the company of this man finding out. He was from Boston, and he had come to Amsterdam a bit like me, on a bit of a whim, found that job on a bit of a whim, but he was actually a dance teacher. He taught dance, so I joined his class. Now, we had live drummers. We were learning to move our shoulders and our hips. I didn't realise I had shoulders and hips before. And one day he said to me, now look, I got somewhere really special to take you today to show you something. He added, one day you're going to write about all this. He probably knew. People, you know, they know things about you. So we were in a side street off the main place in Amsterdam, and outside a kind of nightclub was a notice propped on the pavement which said, Sex Theatre, live acts. Are we going in here? Come on in. Now, I then listened to the most unusual job interview ever. My new interesting friend was being interviewed by the owner of this sex theatre to see if he would be interested in choreographing whatever went on. Choreographing sex acts. When we were outside, I said, Ilanga, sex theatres don't have choreographers. Well, he said, they do now. I don't think anyone else in the world has had this kind of job. See, the owner wanted to present sex as loving and playful and tender. And he wanted that portrayed by the people who worked there. Yeah? I would say, Ilanga, how is that possible? To show tenderness and things and put that on stage? Well, he certainly tried. You weren't allowed to work at this theatre unless you were a couple. See, in Amsterdam, as some of you may know, the other sex theatres just had people that they, anyone who would do it, often on heroin and needing a lot of quick money, in a hurry, would just be in the wings, enter, have sex, and disappear into the wings. Next, please, that kind of thing. This theatre, Caress, was not like that. You were not employed unless you were a couple and you had genuine feelings for each other. I mean, this is extraordinary business, So my friend would actually interview the people who wanted to work there to check that they were actually capable of showing some foreplay, some tenderness, all that kind of thing. This was 1975, Amsterdam. Wow. So little me gets very curious about all this. And one night, I remember, I telephoned my friend at 3 o'clock in the morning and said, I'm coming round, I need to talk to you. I knew he'd still be up. And so I took the night train and I declared that I wanted to work in his theatre, but I wanted to be a stripper. And I think that my friend, who was courteous beyond belief, Bostonian courtesy, amazing, he actually took me on as a stripper and taught me how to take my clothes off gracefully. I think he must have choked on his Marlboro cigarettes watching me try to handle this with any kind of aplomb. I'd say, Ilanga, I don't know what to do. And he would say, look here, you haven't really got the tits, but you got the legs. So you got to give them legs. Go on, give them legs. So he made a very gentle joke about the things that could be joked about. And finally, I'll never forget my first night. There were exactly 2 people in the audience, and I really thought, see, here's the Sunday school teacher. I really thought when I stood on that stage with nothing on at all, I really thought that the God of my conditioned childhood would say something or strike me down. But when nothing happened, I thought, oh, okay. What was happening inside me? What do you reckon? I allowed myself to do something in the company of someone I could trust, someone I could look up to and respect, which was my choreographer, and that was my liberation, I guess. And it was Amsterdam who did it. Yeah. But Amsterdam was a very confronting for me because of the red light district and the practicality and the fact that the Dutch people felt that this was, an okay way to be. And so I wrote, if you find this confronting, it's nothing to how I felt about Amsterdam. It's an Amsterdam prayer. Let us pray. Before these smoke-blacked walls of Church St. Nicholas, let us give thanks for all our possibilities and thus for our profanities. Let us give praise for the gutters that carry the overflow of man's excess. Let us walk the red light district and allow ourselves to feel the pain of our repressed desires. Let us sing a ceaseless litany of praise to the demon forces which are the life breath of this place. May this congregation be blessed with entrance to the kingdoms of lust, where we may dwell forevermore. Amen. You like that? Okay. No scowls of disapproval. The Sunday school teacher had to learn stuff. There was so much else to learn. Why would I not want to dive into it like an ant into a honey barrel? Okay. Next up then was Athens, which did not agree with me at all. After a place like Amsterdam, you go to Athens and all of a sudden it's not safe to be on the streets at night. I mean, you get hassled. There would be a man coming up beside you and saying, Popane, where are you going? And I don't know what it was meant to mean, but I didn't appreciate it. And Athens was not really a place for me after Amsterdam in particular, I guess. Yeah. And also, okay, who's experienced Athens, Greece? Yeah. What would your comment be?
I know females who I was travelling with felt uncomfortable there.
Yes.
Yeah, that they were being hassled.
Yes.
Frequently. Yeah.
Any other impressions? I didn't.
I was just careful what I wore.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
I felt that. Yeah.
I found in Italy, I was there in the late 80s.
In Italy, yeah.
In Italy in the late 80s.
Yes.
And there were men
Yes.
everywhere,
Yes.
and I saw no women.
Right.
It was just men in cafes drinking coffee.
Right.
Policemen with
Yeah.
guns everywhere.
Wow.
In uniforms.
Yeah.
And I didn't see women
No.
during the day.
Right.
And I figured
No.
that's because they were at home looking after the children.
Well, they are. They're cooking, they're cleaning, they're looking after the children. They're not out there. No.
It was interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. No. Well, instead of telling you, reading my poem about Plaka, I was living on Plaka. That's the piece under the Acropolis, yeah? And instead of reading the poem, I will tell you that what chased me out of Athens was an attempted rape. I was followed home from the discotheque at 2 o'clock in the morning. I didn't know. I had a house that had two parts to it. I was in one part making coffee at 2 in the morning. Then when I entered the other part, the light had been put off. A hand came out of the dark, pulled me onto the bed. Didn't succeed because, thank God, Darcy, my neighbour, came home, saw the light off and said, "Are you okay?" And I just yelled out, and the guy, I'll never forget, he has his hands around my throat. He was deciding what to do. And so we ended up in the police station at 2 a.m. I just tell this story because this is why I left Greece, right? Not so much for the attack, but the police, here was I, bruises on my throat, talking about it, and the cop leans over to a vase of flowers on the desk and picks out a dead flower and hands it to me and says, "Only whores are on the streets at night." I thought, okay, this is it. I'm out of here. Yeah, right. That's instead of the poem. But then I get to Paris, right? Now, this is a whole different vibe. Okay, so who's been to Paris? Woohoo! Yeah, whole different ball game, eh? All of a sudden it felt lighter, it felt feminine, it felt like a city for women. And I thought, whoa, this is a bit of okay. But the city was saying to me, okay, well, what do you think you're going to do here? You know, who are you? What are you going to do here? And I thought, Well, I was in a nightclub above the Champs-Élysées, and the barman, I'm very fond of barmen, they're very helpful. They know all sorts of things. Said to me, you're new in town. I said, and what, you looking for work? Mm-hmm. Well, what kind of work? Said he. And I paused, and then I said, well, I said, dance work. And he said, oh, this was in French, but he said, oh, I happen to know that they're looking for girls at the Folies Bergère. You might try there. Folies Bergère? I said to myself, whoa, there's some kind of famous nightclub, eh? Where Josephine Baker did that banana dance, and Maurice Chevalier worked there, and Charlie Chaplin did too. Ooh. Well, next night, it's 10 o'clock, and I am drinking wine in a bar and looking at the facade of this famous theatre, and I found the side street and the entrance of the artist's entrance was wide open. Warm night. It's 10 o'clock at night, right? No one knows I'm here. I've got no appointment, no credentials. I went in, and there were all these strange-looking people inside. I couldn't tell male from female. They were all in orange dressing gowns. They had flapping their false eyelashes at each other and drinking and smoking. I bowled up to the nearest one and said, look, I'm here to see the artistic director. And they didn't bat those famous eyelashes. They just waved me to an open office door. So in I go, and there was no one in there. There was a huge desk, and on the wall was posters of semi-naked women, because it's a classy topless show. And then I hear this voice behind me saying, "Qu'est-ce que vous voulez, madame, dans mon théâtre? What are you doing in my theatre, madame?" And this Hitchcock-looking guy, elderly, stout, all dressed in black, is standing there in the doorway. And I'm thinking, oh my God, this is Michel Giamatti. He's the artistic director of this outfit. And he repeats, "Madame, qu'est-ce que vous voulez?" In my show, it goes, if I step away, no, you can't. Okay, he's standing there with his arms folded. "What are you doing in my theatre, madame?" And I say, "Bonsoir, monsieur. I have heard that you are looking for dancers. I am a dancer." I said to him, I've got long legs. And then I paused. And it came out in French. I said, "J'ai pas les seins," which literally means I don't have breasts. I actually said to this guy, I don't have breasts. Now, Mr. Giamatti he just looked at me full on and he said, "Madame, est-ce que vous êtes une femme? Are you a woman?" And I said, "Oui." And he said, "Vous n'êtes pas un homme. You're not a man." And I said, "No," wondering where this conversation was going. And then he says to me, I kid you not, he says to me, "Vous n'êtes pas un transvestite." And I was so stunned at this question that I didn't say anything. So he just said to me, "Very well, madame, you are a woman, you therefore do have breasts. You want to work in my theatre, we must take a look at you. Undress yourself, madame. I shall return." And he leaves the office. Shit. My bluff has been called. This is an on-the-spot audition. So I took off my clothes. Well, I'm used to nudity. It was no big deal. Left on the knickers, left on the high heels. He comes back in the doorway. I'll never forget this moment of complete, objectivization. He just narrowed his eyes and looked at me, and I thought, he's just eyeing me up, completely completely impersonally to see what's happening here. And he says to me, smile. So I gave him a very large fake smile. And then he says, walk towards me. So I did that. And then he says, put your hands on your hips and make a turn. And when I did that, he says to me, very well, madame, I am giving you what you came for. Give your name to your reception and return tomorrow for your first rehearsal. I am offering you work at the Folies Bergère. And that's how a 34-year-old ex-Sunday school teacher, all the way from Palmerston North, with very little dance training and very small breasts, gate crashed her way into showbiz in Paris. It was, of course, a fascinating year of the secrets of the dressing room, you know. You had to cover yourself with body makeup completely. So you had a, you know, sponge in one hand, body tan in the other, all your clothes off in the dressing room, and you had to cover yourself, you know, all over. You had to put your false eyelashes on. I was very bad at that. But they liked, in me being la petite anglaise, I was the little English one. What is New Zealand? We have never heard of it. Nouvelle-Zélande, qu'est-ce que c'est ça? They would say. So I was, you know, the joke of the dressing room. But they let me get away with things, which was the main thing, really. Now I think I have to ask Carly to give me
Your prop.
my visual aid. This is a genuine feather boa from the Folies Bergère. It was stolen for me by my dresser friend. Harold was very naughty, and he did this sort of thing. He would say, oh, don't worry, it's last year's colour, they'll never use it again, which is probably quite believable. And Harold, incidentally, used to hold dinner parties on the Monday, which was our night off, and he would have 4-course dinners, and for each of the 4 courses, he would be dressed in a different outfit. And I began to recognise what he was wearing. He had borrowed costumes from the theatre for his dinner parties. So he would have, you know, the top hat or the spangles or the boas or whatever, and we'd be drinking soup with this very delightful dresser friend of mine. Yeah. In the end, it all palled a bit. It was a bit mechanical. Hey, who's seen a show? The Folies Bergère, the Lido, or the Moulin Rouge? Anyone here seen those? Well, they're extraordinary. They're real show business, full of glamour and stunning outfits and beautifully made up women and everything choreographed beautifully. And that's why it's stunning. I mean, I wasn't stunning on my own, but when I'm in with a whole lineup of girls doing the same thing at the same time, you know, that's why it looks as stunning as it does. So I moved with, I had dressing room friends and dinner parties, and in the interval, if we were in the dressing room, the boys, they were all called boy dancers. They weren't men dancers, they were the boys, would swan into our dressing room to inspect the latest makeup that we had, or whatever it was. And so this poem was called Boy Dancer, because this was really what it seemed like to me, these men who were dancing at the Folies Bergère. Here's one of them. Poised before the mirror, like gazelle above a lake where he may drink his fill, appraisingly he looks. Fingers a cheekbone into prominence, Cupid bows his mouth, one eye on the boy next door, smothers sweat in powder. Profiled to his satisfaction, he awaits. Downstairs in the wings, their odours undisguised, the stage crew sweat and strain, muscles taut beneath the painted flats, undisguised among each other, unambiguous, they pull and heave to set the stage to rights. And now the god descends, ephemeral creature of the twilight time, in flight from harsh reality of day and night, male and female, forever in between. Yet he's a prisoner, content to flit forever in the mirror image of his own fantasy. Does that say something about today as well, do you think? Okay. So, that was Paris. I've got my time now to see how we're doing. Okay. Am I doing okay? Yes. No scowls. No. You're going to have questions afterwards, but before I leave Paris, any, yes, Mark.
You talked of your rehearsal. So how long was the rehearsal period and how arduous was it?
It wasn't arduous because not too much was asked of us. In fact, the person who rehearsed us was a former ballerina, and she really turned up her nose at giving us the simple instructions that she gave us, you know. And she cottoned on to my famous inability to follow a choreography, because actually I have difficulty at any point being told what to do, including when I'm dancing on a stage. And she responded by putting me in the front row. So if I put a foot wrong, everyone else had to follow. But yeah, the first night was a bit of a worry because I didn't know what to do, and I was in the wings waiting to go on. I actually was fully clothed in a big crinoline and a heavy wig, and I was hanging onto the skirt with one hand and the wig with the other, shuffling onto where I hoped the stage was, and all of my colleagues called out, don't worry, just stand still. And then the lights came up, and all of these faces, 1,600 people can fit in the theatre, all gazing at me and me thinking, oh, what am I supposed to do? And then I heard that whispered instruction that I was to hear all down that year I spent in the theatre, sourire, smile. So, big fake smile got you through. But no, rehearsals were not, you just had to follow what the others were doing, unless you were the one that they were all supposed to follow, like me. That was a bit difficult. The power of the chorus line, and that's what I was, a mannequin nu, a naked mannequin, is in everyone doing the same thing at the same time. That's why it looks as it does. Why it looks so wonderful. Yeah.
Why did you decide to leave Paris?
Hey, wait.
Why did you decide to leave Paris?
Yes, good question. I haven't quite left Paris. I'm going to give you a little excerpt. Shall I? I'm going to give you an excerpt from the show that I've got coming here. Okay, I've got two shows. The first is called Please Adjust Your G-String. Is there anyone here who happened to see that last year sometime? Okay. Hey. Great. The new one is called Have You Seen My G-String? So I'm going to give you a few minutes worth of this. Is now I'm in my theatre. I can't move because of the microphone, so you have to imagine what I might be doing. In answer to your question, after I left the Folies Bergère, I actually had a bit of a freelance career stripping in France. Right, here's where I talk about it in the play. If you want to get dance work in Paris or with a Paris base, you need an impresario. That's the posh word for an agent, an impresario. Most of them were men, so I decided I'd be safer with a woman. So I score an interview with Madame Valande. Now, she is not particularly impressed when I tell her I've got 3 dance numbers. What she wants to know is, am I prepared to do consummation? Consummation. Does she expect me to have sex with the men after the show? That's what consummation means. But it turns out that she doesn't mean consummation. She means consumption. Would I be prepared to drink with the men after the show? Well, I wasn't prepared to do either consumption or consummation with men after the show, so I dropped Madame Valande and got myself a plain old agent. So that led to a year or more of being a stripper, being farmed out, I think might be the phrase, farmed out to the French provinces. I danced in discotheques, in casinos, in nightclubs. Even once I can remember dancing in a castle. Yeah. What I do is pack my costumes into my bag, set off from my attic apartment, take the metro to one of Paris's 5 railway stations, and hope I got the right train to the right place. Then late in the afternoon, I'd arrive at some strange place, and I'd be met by someone from the disco. Usually it was the disc jockey, and he would drive me to my appointed hotel to rest before coming to collect me later and go to the disco and get ready for the show. But on this particular occasion, there was a difference. Something different happened. The disc jockey, whose name was William, he didn't drive me to a hotel to rest. He picked me up at the station and drove me straight to the discotheque, where I had to hang around in a dusty cupboard, which was the dressing room, for a few hours before I then did my work, okay? And then after I'd done it, the club manager informs me that there is no hotel booked for the night. What am I supposed to do? William will look after you. William, the disc jockey, he'd played a lot of rap during the evening. He's skinny, he's got glasses, he's got pimples. He looks as if he still went to school. Well, the disco's over at 4 o'clock and William's driving me around town trying to find a hotel with a room, and there isn't one. Now, I'm anticipating a cold wait on a deserted platform to get the train back to Paris. Oh, mais non, you can sleep chez moi, says William. Oh no, has the club manager set me up? Is this to be consummation after all? With William? William's abode is a room and a half in a boarding house. He points to the shower down the hall and he proceeds to make breakfast. We eat bacon and eggs sitting on either side of a double bed, after which he clears away the plates, sprays air freshener, turns down the bed and leaves. I am dimly aware of his pyjama-clad form slipping into the bed beside me. We come to at 3 in the afternoon, just in time for me to catch the train to Paris. I'm not usually asked to share my dressing room with someone, but on one occasion I'm told I'll be joined by someone called Mimosa. Now Mimosa turns out to be a man, middle-aged, balding, carrying a huge suitcase. I do Edith Piaf. Can't we girls get ready together? Well, the following transformation is absolutely extraordinary. He's going to be Edith Piaf, one of France's most famous female singers. When I tell him afterwards how convincing he is as a woman, I think I detect a blush behind Edith's makeup. Well, all of that was all very well, but I wanted something a bit classier, and the answer came in the form of a giant birthday cake. My job was it would be supplied by the agency, taken to the premises. My job was to hide inside this birthday cake, and at 3 taps on the icing was my signal to jump out and greet the birthday boy. Well, this was going to be a lot better, I thought, than dealing with linguistically confused impresarios, careless discotheque managers, and having to sleep with pimply disc jockeys. So there were a couple of years of such experiences, which is why I've turned them into a piece of theatre. What else would one do? I loved Paris. Ultimately, I made a return to Amsterdam because I was at that point deciding to write about my experiences. And if any of you are in an op shop or a second-hand bookshop, look out for Amsterdam Affair. That was my first book describing the Amsterdam part. Yeah. Back in New Zealand, I wrote Dancing Naked, a much longer book, with all of the things that I've left out of this talk are in that. Okay. Well, I better come back to New Zealand now, hadn't I? Late 80s. And gosh, you know, no cabarets to gate crash, you know. Lots of things missing that what was I going to do? What adventures could I have now that I was back in New Zealand? And at first I was quite cross. There weren't going to be any adventures. So I did something, very conservative, I suppose. Who else belongs to a Toastmasters club? Oh well, I did. And there I met a character, a Wellington icon called the Duke of Wellington. Wellington had a duke, a fun duke, although he was, made official by the mayor. He was a dapper, daffy, delightful Englishman, complete with a bicorn hat and a scarlet jacket, and he had his own army. Perhaps in Palmerston North also you haven't heard of Alf's Imperial Army, ALF. Yeah, what does it stand for, remember? ALF stands for Action for Love and Freedom. He had an army who had battles with flower bombs and paper swords. Much fun. Gorgeous stuff. What was that?
I think to see Alf's army in Christchurch.
They're bigger in the South Island, I think, than in the North here. Yeah, Alf's Imperial Army. Yeah. So here was this wonderfully fun-loving character, and in his company we fell in love, and he asked me to be the Duchess, and I got to be official to, the mayor's got to agree that this is all right, otherwise it doesn't quite work. So we'd been invited to civic dinners, and it was the Duke's duty, self-made, to greet the cruise ships that were coming in to the harbour, right? He'd be at the bottom of the gangplank saying hello to everybody, and he would say to me that he could greet in 8 different languages, and that included Australian. Now, when I first saw the Duke's room for the first time, all I could think of to say was, gosh, it looks as if about 6 different people live here. And he said, well, actually they do, and what's more, they all get on well with each other. And after all, he was the Duke of Wellington. He was the protégé of the Wizard of Christchurch. He was the commander of Alf's Imperial Army. He was a Morris dancer, a wine connoisseur, a snappy dresser, and my very special friend. It was our duty to greet visiting royalty, like real royalty, that is. And there was one occasion when Prince Charles, he's King Charles now, Prince Charles was in town, right? And he was on a royal walkabout, as you are. And he saw the Duke's hat and obviously thought, this is someone I've got to say hello to. So I'll never forget my impression of Charles. Yeah. He came and he stood in front of Tony, the Duke, and he looked him up and down. And he checked out Alf's Imperial Army on either side, and Charles said, and who let you lot out? And it's just classic, just classic. Yeah. So we had a wonderful time together. The Duke died 12 years ago now, and we had an extraordinary, wonderful time together, being a fun Duke and a fun Duchess. I haven't read you anything serious. You want me to get serious or not? No. I'll just have a look for just 1 or 2 more things. Okay. Oh, okay. I haven't talked about Elvis, and I haven't talked about... Okay. In COVID time, I'm not sure how it was for you people. Pretty awful for all of us. But, and I made up quite a lot of poems about the protest in Parliament, all the anti-vaxxers and everything that went on there. In fact, I was down there most times, just walking around with my eyes, extraordinary what was going on. But the lighter-hearted side of it was that what were people buying most of in the supermarket during COVID? Loading up on loo paper. It's something we can't do without, and of that fact I have no doubt. Our bottoms need a wipe or 2 after time spent on the loo. But lately it's got out of hand and folks are spending up real grand. Their trolleys are a sight to see, and it's all to do with poos and wee. 5 packs of 4 or even 8, I don't know how these folks to rate. They're lugging home some stuff that's plush, the fate of which is just to flush. The question I feel bound to ask is, in what realms do their minds bask? Does this emphasis on loo paper point to some more serious caper? Jack Kerouac wrote On the Road on one long spool. 'Twas quite a load. He toted it around the place till someone published it, so he saved face. Perhaps you plan a book to write upon the loo. Well, that's all right. Now you can just take a stroll, and as for me, I'm on a roll. Okay, not too long. I haven't mentioned Elvis yet. Who gets Elvis on their Facebook? How does Facebook know I'm an Elvis fan from way back? You don't know. I get Elvis all the time. They must know that I heard Heartbreak Hotel when I was 16 or 13 or something, and something in me happened. At the supermarket, again, we've got screens. Have you got screens in yours, and they show you old musical numbers and things? Well, we get this is. I was in the supermarket and I heard. Oh my God! I heard the sound, and I looked up. This poem's called "Yoked to Elvis." Astride above the egg shelf, on screen at New World, is an icon of our age. It's Elvis Presley, all unfurled. Hips aswirl and sideburns long, it's all in order for the song. He's mesmerising, I'm transfixed, as he postulates and grinds while belting out Suspicious Minds. But the eggs, they're stacked below, oblivious to all this show, neatly ranked in rows of white, boxed and tidy and innocent quite of what's above. If they just knew, their shells would crack, their yolks would spew, they'd heed the call of something new. And more than that, the eggy chicks would all emerge full-formed, grown up and feathered, no longer by their shells so tethered. Those hips and thighs have evoked sighs, dampened theatre seats, sparked teenage orgasms that fairly match those pelvic spasms. Risk a look above the eggs. Lose yourself between those legs. Nothing will ever be the same. And Elvis is the one to blame. What shall I finish with? So you can ask me questions. I don't know. Something funny? Something serious?
Serious.
Serious. Okay, this is about as serious as I can get. I've called it Burnt Offering. One day, when I'm a heap of ash, will I think I made a hash of it? All those things I did and said, will they condemn me when I'm dead? It's not that I did something wrong, it's just that I sang my own song. Was I perhaps so out of tune that others thought I was a goon? I hope that I do leave behind something of value from my mind, something to give delight to those who like to laugh, not fight. And then they'll say, she lived and loved and won the day. You're allowed to ask questions. I mean, you're supposed to ask questions. You're supposed to want to know the rest of the stuff. I didn't tell you. No.
When did you come back to New Zealand?
Oh, fair question. Late 80s in the end. There was 4 years in Amsterdam, 1 in Athens, 5 in Paris, and 2 more back in Amsterdam. So late 80s I came back, yeah.
Why did you come back?
Because that book of mine actually got accepted for publication, the one that's called Amsterdam Affair. So Hodder and Stoughton, they're out of business now, they wrote saying, we like it. So I therefore planned to come back thinking, you know, there's going to be a launch party and what did I get told? that my first hands-on tips here, blasted Bert, the person who'd okayed the manuscript had moved on to Australia, and the new person did not like the book and wanted it to be rewritten. Yeah. So what's the expression? My heel was caught. I had to stay if I wanted the book to come out. So, and I was given instructions on how to correct. It was a structural, actually, question. This bit doesn't belong here, it belongs there. This bit over here should go there, that sort of thing. Anyone had that experience of having your work edited and told, you know, you've got things in the wrong order, this bit belongs over there, that kind of thing? That's what I had to rewrite. Yeah, Carly, right? Yeah. So and by that time I'd sort of got myself somewhat re-established in New Zealand, and thought, yeah, it's time to be here now. So I stayed long enough, and have stayed long enough, to write a fuller account called Dancing Naked, which was published in 1997. And that's also one that turns up in the odd second-hand shop, or is findable on Amazon if you wanted a fuller account of what I've covered tonight. Yeah.
So how did you earn your living once you got back?
Yes. I got a job as a proofreader for, this was the 90s, the then Dom, the Dominion, and the Post. They were separate at that time for those 10 years that I was there. And I used the proofreading symbols, you know. The proofreading room had easels with hard copy on them, and we could use, you know, it was real pen on paper stuff, none of this electronic business. And in the early 90s, when those two newspapers, I'm not sure if you Palmerstonians would have been aware, the Dominion and the Post became one and became the Dom Post. And at that point, the electronic digital side of things was so developed that we proofreaders were made redundant. And I was extremely lucky to then walk into a superb job as a trainer in something called Plain English. The company specialised in how to tell people in a business setting to write, you know, a readable report, even a report that might be a pleasure to read, as opposed to combing through it, looking for what you're looking for when it should have been upfront. Structure again. So I taught structure and language and short sentences and no jargon. If public servants didn't throw things at me when I said things about jargon, oh, but it's our language. It's all very well, but if no one understands it, why are you writing it? This sort of thing. I did that for 10 years. Yeah.
You had no background in literary stuff?
Literary?
Or
I've
lost the bit once you've left school.
Yeah, 97% for schools heard English. And university degree, forgot to mention that. University degree in English. Yeah, should have mentioned that. And 4 years in a secondary school before I actually left this country, teaching English. Yeah, left that bit out. Thank you for the question.
And Sunday school for your storytelling prowess.
Say again?
And Sunday school teaching for your storytelling prowess.
I'm not sure really where that came from, but perhaps the Sunday school teaching had its place. Yeah. Mark?
How much had New Zealand changed in the time that you were away, and what was the main things you noticed?
I think I didn't have much experience of Courtenay Place before I left, but I love Courtenay Place now. I love it for all the reasons that some people don't like it. It's lively, and I've learned how to handle myself, shall we say, when necessary. In not danger. I'm not talking danger, just general, you know, loudness and noise. So Courtenay Place has got wilder. Eating is now wonderful. I guess I learned to eat French things and Dutch things when I came back here. There were also restaurants, weren't there? Restaurants and coffee houses that sprang up in the late 80s. So it would be that, I think, would be the main change that I noted and liked. Yeah.
What are your thoughts about AI for your art?
Well, if AI ever dares to put its head up, it's going to be firmly squashed by me. No, seriously. I know people have written poems on AI. It appalls me. I would never stoop so low myself, and it is stooping low. God, poetry's about the only thing, we've got that shouldn't be touched. I might write a poem about AI. I'll send it to you. It will not be a kind poem, okay? And as for an algorithm, gosh, if I think of writing a poem about an algorithm, I think of a nasty sort of a 10-legged creature crawling around like a bed bug. Don't start me. Any other questions? I'll stick around afterwards anyway if anyone wants to ask me, over there by the table.
Oh, you're doing a show around New Zealand?
Oh, I'm glad you asked that. When you mean my performance piece?
Is that a theatre?
In the theatre,
Oh.
yeah. The one called Have You Seen My G-String will be done in Palmerston at the Globe somewhere. Stuart, do you have a question?
Not a question, but a bit of a statement.
Yep.
I spent most of the
My brother.
By the way, my name's Stuart Davison, and I live on a sheep farm at Palmer Valley. I spent most of today listening to my dogs, listening to my sheep, talking back to my dogs, and believe it or not, I actually talked back to my sheep. I hopped in my truck at 5:30 tonight and drove in here. I've got to say that after spending a day with dogs and sheep, to listen to this, I'm quite shocked. But what a neat lady. And for one thing, there's no wonder she's got a fabulous friend like Carly Thomas. And she's obviously been around the world and had some neat experiences and relayed them to us tonight. And nothing else I can say. I'm really surprised. One of the reasons is that because I am her brother.
He's a good storyteller too, by the way.